Hi girls, today we will be starting off your second chapter in business regulations. So your second chapter is Indian Sale of Goods Act 1930. Okay, under this chapter you'll be studying about definition of contract sale, essentials of contract sale, conditions and warranties, rights and duties of buyer, rights and duties of an unpaid seller. Okay, so now we will be starting off with your first topic of the second chapter, that is Indian Sale of Goods Act 1930. So, the first topic is your definition of contract of sale. Now, what is this definition of contract of sale? It says, according to section 4(1) of the Sale of Goods Act 1930, contract of sale of goods is a contract, okay? It is a contract whereby the seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods to buyer for a price. Okay, so what is this definition stating? There are two parties in agreement, that is, one is seller and one is buyer. Here the seller is agreeing to transfer or agrees to transfer the property of goods to the buyer. Okay, he is transferring the possession to the buyer. Okay, he is selling and he is transferring the possession to the buyer for a particular price. He is transferring it, but for a certain price. The buyer has to pay the price to the seller. Section 4(1) of the Sale of Goods Act defines the contract of sale of goods as a contract whereby the seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods to the buyer for a price. I hope this particular definition is clear. Now let's move on to the next topic. So your next topic is essentials of a contract sale. Now what is this essentials? Essential means it could be importance, it could be features, it could be one in the year. Okay, it could be benefits also. What are the essentials of contract of sale? The essentials, the following elements must coexist. Okay, these elements must exist. Remember we studied in the first chapter also the essentials. Only when those particular things are existing the contract will be valid. If not, it will be void. I hope you all remember we discussed that in first chapter as well, right? So similarly in your second chapter also we have essentials of contract of sale. Now these following elements must coexist so as to constitute a contract of sale of goods under the Sale of Goods Act of 1930. So basically it is saying that these essentials have to be there in case you have to constitute a contract of sale, or if the contract of sale must exist, these particular elements must be there. Okay, now let's look into the first element. There are totally six essentials are there. So we'll look into the first essential. The first essential says there must be at least two parties. Okay, two parties. First essential is there should be two parties, that is seller and the buyer. There should be two parties, one is seller and one is buyer. Next, the subject matter of the contract must be necessarily be goods covering only movable property. Now when you enter into a particular contract you will have a subject matter, right? So the subject matter, it is compulsory for the subject matter to cover only movable properties. Okay, only something that can be moved. For example, it could be your pen, pencil, stationery, anything. You can move it from here to there, right? But whereas compared to land, building and all, you cannot move it from one place to another. So the subject matter should only have movable property. It must be either goods owned or possessed by the seller or future goods. Okay, it can either be goods that suppose this is a good, okay, that I am a seller, so it should be either in my possession for selling it at the moment or for the future sale. Okay, so the subject matter of the contract must necessarily be covering only those goods that are movable property. It may be either existing goods owned or possessed by the seller. It could be goods which are owned, which could be existing and possessed by the seller, or the future goods. Okay, now what is the third essential? Third essential is a price in money, not in kind, should be paid or promised. Okay, a price in money, not in kind, should be paid or promised. This money has to be paid by the buyer when he is purchasing the goods from the seller. Okay, when the seller transfers the possession of the property, the buyer has to pay the amount to the seller. Now, fourth essential, a transfer of property in goods from seller to buyer must take place The contract of sale is made by an offer to buy or sell goods for a price by one party and the acceptance of such offer by the other. Now, it says there are two parties in agreement, that is the buyer and the seller. Now, buyer is agreeing to buy goods from the seller and seller is agreeing to sell goods to the buyer. Now, both of them, in between both, there is an agreement, right? There is an agreement. Seller is agreeing to sell goods to the buyer for certain amount of price. So, when the seller is transferring the possession to the buyer has to pay the amount in return to the purchase of the goods. That is what the fourth essential states. Now, what is the fifth essential? A contract of sale must be absolute or conditional as per section 4 subsection 2. Okay, it should be absolute. It should either be absolute or it should be conditional. It should have certain terms and conditions anything. You could pay half amount now, half amount later, as per what the buyer and seller wants to agree. On the basis of that, there will be various conditions which will be set. Last essential is all other essential elements of valid contract must be present in the contract of sale. Suppose if the contract of sale act has to be valid, if the contract has to be valid, all of these essentials must be present in a particular contract. Only then the particular contract is said to be a valid contract. Okay, I hope this topic is clear. So you have totally 6 essentials and all of these essentials must be present in a particular contract of sale in order for the contract to be valid. If not, if even one essential is missing, the contract will be void. So your next topic in this chapter is conditions and warranties. Now, what is condition and what is warranty? The name itself states that condition means there are certain terms and conditions, right? What is warranty? Warranty is nothing but it is a kind of guarantee. So, under conditions and warranties, you have a stipulation in a contract of sale with reference to goods which are subject thereof may be condition or warranty. A condition is a stipulation essential to the main purpose of the contract, the breach of which gives right to repudiate the contract and claim damages. On the other hand, warranty is a stipulation collateral to the main purpose of the contract, the breach of which gives rise to claim for damages but not a right to reject the good or treat the contract as repudiated. Okay, what is a condition? Now there are two parties. There is a condition, right? There should always be two parties. Now we just looked into the essentials. What is the first essential? There must always be two parties in an agreement, that is buyer and the seller. Now when buyer and seller will enter into a particular agreement, you will have a subject matter. Based on that subject matter, you will set certain terms and conditions. Now when the certain terms and conditions are set, if either the buyer or the seller is not following the terms and conditions, you can immediately cancel the particular contract. You can repudiate to the contract or you can claim for damages. Suppose if the seller does not deliver the goods on time to the buyer might suffer certain amount of loss, right? That loss can be recovered by the buyer from the seller. But when you're talking about warranty is not same as a condition. Okay, in terms of warranty, what can happen is you can claim for your damages. Okay, in case of warranty, you can claim for the damages, but you cannot cancel the contract. You cannot cancel the main purpose of the contract. But whereas in the condition, you can recover your losses, you can recover your damages, you can even cancel the contract, right? But in warranty, you cannot do it. Even if you have any breach which has been arise in a particular agreement, you can only claim for the damages. Okay, this is as per section 12 subsection 3 of the Sale of Goods Act of 1930. Now, what are the differences between condition and warranty? There are 3 differences between condition and between warranty. First condition is essential to the main purpose of the contract. Okay, yes, condition is the first essential to the main purpose of the contract. It will actually tell you what the contract is, between whom the contract is, and what is the main purpose for you to form that particular contract. Whereas warranty is collateral to the main purpose. This is the essential, whereas this is the collateral. It is just a collateral to the particular contract. Second, the aggrieved party can repudiate the contract under condition. The second point is the aggrieved party can repudiate the contract or claim damages or both in case of breach of condition. As I told you, the particular party, in case of the buyer or the seller, if any one of the two will suffer loss, they can claim for damages and they can all in terms of breach of contract. But in warranty, the aggrieved party can claim only damages in case of breach. Okay, they can only claim damages in case of breach of warranty only. Okay, so The last difference is under condition, a breach of condition may be treated as a breach of warranty. A breach of condition can also be treated as breach of warranty, but a breach of warranty cannot be treated as breach of condition. Here, under condition, even if it is a warranty that is breached, you can claim for damages. But in warranty, only if you have a breach of warranty, you can claim for damages. If not, you cannot claim for damages. Okay, this is condition and this is warranty, and these were the three differences. Now next, when can a condition be treated as a warranty? These are the following cases when a condition can be treated as a warranty. First condition, where the buyer altogether waives the performance of condition, a party may for his own benefit waive a stipulation. Okay, when the buyer altogether waives the performance of the condition. If he's waiving the performance of the condition, a party for his own benefit, if he's doing this for his own benefit, can waive a stipulation. Or where the buyer elects to treat the breach of condition as one of the warranty. Suppose now in a particular agreement there is a breach of warranty, but the buyer wants to treat it as a breach of condition, he can do so. Okay, that is to say, he may claim only damages instead of repudiating the contract. Instead of cancelling the contract, he can only claim for the damages. Third condition is where the contract is non-servable and the buyer has accepted either whole goods or any part thereof. Acceptance means the acceptance as envisaged in Section 72 of the Indian Contract Act. I think we've already completed this particular topic in Indian Contract Act in 1872, wherein we have looked into the definitions of acceptance, offer, okay, what is a promise and what is a contract. All of these definitions we've looked into in the first chapter. Now, it says under your third condition, it says where the contract is non-servable. Okay, suppose there are two parties in a contract, that is buyer and a seller. Now, buyer has accepted. Now seller has agreed to give you 50 rupees 50 rupees goods. Okay, but the seller in that 50 rupees has accepted only 20 rupees product, and half of it he waives off. So it is non-servable. Okay, it is non-servable. Okay, based on the acceptance. Last condition, where the fulfillment of any condition of warranty is excused by law by reason of impossibility of or otherwise. Okay, any condition of warranty is excused. Fulfillment of any condition of warranty is excused by law by reason of impossibility or otherwise. There could be any reason which could arise because of any impossibility or otherwise. Based on that, there is no condition of warranty that is fulfilled. Okay, now next is you have two types of conditions and warranties, that is express and implied conditions and warranties. Now the term express only states that something that is expressed. Implied is something that is you are keeping within, you are not expressing and telling. So these are the meaning of the terms express and implied. So conditions and warranties may be expressed or implied. Okay, the condition and the warranty can either be expressed or it can either be implied. Now what is okay, they are expressed when the terms of contract are expressly stating them. Now if the buyer and seller are entering into a contract and they are expressing what are their terms and conditions, that time it is an expressed condition and warranty. But they are when is it implied? When they are not expressly provided. When the terms and conditions or any information is not expressed, that means it is an implied condition and warranty. Okay, express conditions are those which are agreed upon between the parties at the time of contract. It is a term and condition which is agreed upon by the parties, both the parties, that is seller and buyer, at the time of entering into the contract. They are expressly provided in the contract. The implied conditions, on the other hand, are those which are presumed by law to be present in the contract. Suppose you want to enter into a contract. Now the law has already stated that there should be two parties in a contract. That is something you do not have to express, right? It has already been given to you by the law. It has already been given to you by the law. So it is presumed. Okay, implied condition in warranty is something that is already presumed by law that is to be present in the contract. Okay, there should be two parties in the contract. The law has already told you, so it is something that you already know as per the condition of the particular contract. So it is presumed by the law to be present in the contract. It should be noted that an implied condition may be negated or waived by an express agreement. Okay, it can be negated or it can be waived by an express agreement. Suppose now it could be a single party agreement, it could be a tripartite or a bipartite. Okay, but usually single party does not come into existence. It is either bipartite, tripartite, or a multilateral agreement. It could be two parties, three parties, or more than three parties in a particular agreement. Now if there are more than three parties, you might have certain terms and conditions, but these terms and conditions which are pre-assumed by the law can be changed by expressing certain terms and conditions by two parties. That is what it is stating, that you can express whatever your terms and conditions are by mentioning the particular thing in an express condition and warranty. Okay, the following conditions are implied in contract of sale of goods unless the circumstances of the contract show a different intention. Now, these are something that are already presumed by the contract by the law. Okay, these are something that are already existing by the help of law. Now, conditions. These are the conditions are implied in contract of sale of goods unless the circumstances of the contract show a different intentions. These are already existing. Okay, now in case if the parties are showing different intentions, it can be changed. Okay, now let's see what are the laws as per the law. What are the laws that are already existing? Okay, first one is condition as to title. Condition as to title according to section 14 subsection A. Now these sections are very important. Always remember as per which section is this coming in. Now, in every contract of sale, unless there is an agreement to the contrary, the first implied condition on the part of the seller is first one, in case of sale, okay, he has the right to sell the goods. Now, there are two parties in the contract, the seller and the buyer. When it comes to the seller, the first condition for the seller is, in case of sale, he has the right to sell the goods. And in case of an agreement to sell, he will have the right to sell the goods at the time when the property is to pass. Okay, in simple words, the condition implied is that the seller has the right to sell the goods at the time when the property has to pass. Okay, if the seller's title turns out to be defective, the buyer must return the goods to the true owner and recover the price from the seller. It's very simple. It says there are two parties in an agreement, that is the seller and the buyer. Now, the seller, firstly, his first condition is he needs to sell the goods to the buyer. He needs to transfer the possession of the goods to the buyer. But in case if the goods are defective, the buyer has the right to return the particular goods to the seller. Okay, he has to return the goods to the true owner of the goods, that is the seller is the true owner of the goods, and recover the price from the seller. Now he should say this particular product is damaged, you take this back and give back by money. Okay, he should return it and take back the amount. Next, sale by description as per section 15. Okay, where there is a contract of sale of goods by description, there is an implied condition. Okay, in terms of sale of description, there is an implied condition that the goods correspond with the description. This rule is based upon the principle that if you contract to sell peas, you cannot compel the buyer to take beans. For example, let me make this very simple for you all. Again, there are two parties in the contract, that is the buyer and the seller. Now, seller has a farm, okay? He has a farm, he has his own vegetable farm. He is saying that he will give you peas or lady finger or anything. Now, instead of lady's finger, he cannot sell mangoes, right? So this is what is he's stating, that if you agree to sell one particular thing, you can, instead of that, you cannot give him some other product. You should give him, if you're telling him you'll give him peas, you should give him peas only. You should not give him beans. Okay, the buyer is bound to accept, the buyer is not bound to accept any pay for the goods which are not in accordance with the description. Suppose we as buyers, I suppose I will go and order this pen. I will order for green color only, and the seller will give me red color. So I am not like, I am as a buyer, you cannot force me or you cannot bound me to buy a red color. If I want green, if I've ordered for green, I have to get green only. No other color. I will not accept any other color or any other product instead of this product. So moving on to your next point, okay, that is your first point is over, your second point is over. Now let's look into the third point. Third is sale by sample. Sale by sample as per section 17. Now I hope you have got an idea as to what the sale by sample is, right? So in a contract of sale by sample, there is implied condition. Okay, now you're not expressing anything. There is a pre-assumed condition which is already being given by the law. Okay, the first one is the bulk shall correspond with the sample in the quality. The buyer shall have a reasonable opportunity of comparing the bulk with sample. Third is the goods shall be free from any defect rendering them unmerchantable, which would not be apparent on reasonable examination of the sample. This condition is applicable only with regard to defects which could not be discovered by an ordinary examination of goods. For example, if you want to purchase a particular watermelon, okay, you will have watermelon vehicles all over the roads, right? So you will not know, before purchasing a watermelon, you would like to see if the watermelon is sweet or if it is not sweet. So what does the what does the seller do? He will remove a certain piece and he will show you the test, whether and based on that you can judge whether the particular watermelon is good, whether it is capable of purchasing, whether it is capable of paying so much price, and whether it is sweet or not. So similarly, before you are ordering something in bulk, okay, you can always demand for the seller to give you a particular sample. Based on the particular sample, you can judge the quality, you can see if the price you're paying is worth it, and if all the terms and conditions are being satisfied. Based on that, you can ask for a sample. The buyer can ask for a particular sample from the seller. Now, fourth one is sale by sample as well as by description. Now we saw what is sale by sample. You're giving just the sample. But as per description, that is section 15, it says when you're giving a particular sample, you are also giving a complete description of the particular good or the sample of the goods. Okay, you're completely describing it to the seller. The seller is giving you the complete description about the particular sample as to what is the quality, how much quantity you will be receiving, what will be the price for certain amount of quantity or quality. Okay, so your next point is condition as to quality or fitness, that is as per section 16. Okay, as per section 16, now there will again be two parties in agreement, that will be a buyer and the seller. Now before the buyer, as per this particular fifth condition, as per the agreement, now buyer, before purchasing a particular good from the seller, he has to examine the entire goods. Okay, he has to examine. For example, if you're going out for shopping, now before you purchase a particular top, you will see if the top is of good quality, if it is damaged or if it is not damaged or anything before paying the amount, right? So the buyer has to carefully examine the particular product before purchasing. If the buyer is failing to do so, he will not be. Okay, so the buyer has to purchase the goods keeping in mind as to what is the quality and everything. Later he cannot blame the seller for giving a damaged good. Now similarly, in the last point, you will see condition as to wholesomeness. Now what happens here is basically there will be certain products that the buyer will not be able to examine and buy before purchasing the particular product. For example, we can look into the example as per the particular point. Now, A supplied F with milk. The milk contained typhoid germs. Now F's wife consumed that particular milk and got infected. Now the buyer, that is F, is holding the seller responsible and he is asking him to pay for damages. Now when can the buyer hold the seller for responsible for damages? See, this was milk. Okay, in certain products you will not be able to judge the quality. You will not know whether the particular thing is damaged or not. Suppose Okay, so in that case, you can hold, in that case, the buyer can hold the seller responsible for damages and he can claim for damages. Now your next topic is implied warranties. Now under your implied warranties, a condition may reach to the level of warranty in cases where the buyer is content with his right of damages and cannot reject the goods. The examination of sections 14 and 16 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930 discloses the following implied warranties. These are the following implied warranties. Now what are implied warranties? Implied warranties are something that are already existing. They are pre-assumed by law. It is already something that is known to a particular party before entering into the contract. It is already been given to you by the law. Now first one is warranty as to undistributed possession. Now what is this warranty as to undistributed possession? It is an implied warranty that the buyer shall have and enjoy quiet possession of goods. That is to say, if the buyer having got possession of goods is later on distributed in his possession, he is entitled to sue the seller for breach of warranty. Two parties in contract, buyer and seller. In case if there is any problem in the possession, if the seller is not giving the possession to the buyer, in that case, the buyer can hold the seller responsible for not giving the possession and for the breach of warranty. Now, warranty as to non-existence of encumbrances. An implied warranty that the goods shall be free from any charge or encumbrance in favor of any third party not declared known to the buyer before or time of contract entered into. Now suppose if there is only two parties in an agreement, that is buyer and the seller, but the seller has also entered into an agreement with the third party, but the buyer does not know about this. So as the buyer does not know about this, he can literally sue the seller for doing this, and also he can charge for, and he can also penalize, and he can charge for any kinds of damages, okay, if it is not known. Third one is disclosure of dangerous nature of goods. You should always disclose the nature of goods as to what the goods you're dealing with. Okay, suppose if the seller or if there is any harmful goods that are harmful to the society or something which are dealt with, then they'll be liable to damages. Okay. Now, warranty as to quality or fitness, as we all looked into what is the warranty as per quality or fitness, we should see whether the particular goods are fit for the purchase or sale based on the time of when the trade is taking place. Okay, so these were your expressed and implied conditions warranty, and under what conditions will a particular contract be expressed and what condition it will be implied. Okay, so this was the explanation for the particular topic.